If you haven't caught on from some of my videos and music choices, I really like the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series, in offering the perfect mix of great stories and characters, fun gameplay, and its incredible ability to jump between tones without missing a beat, each one offering something to like about them, at least in my opinion anyway. One of the things that best exemplifies this are the series' many sub-stories, which can range from helping a dominatrix learn how to properly dominate, to dressing up as a mascot character to help a young girl get over her fears and go through with a life-saving surgery. If that tone shift gave you some whiplash, welcome to Yakuza. But sometimes you encounter a sub-story that just confuses the ever-loving shit out of you, either due to its implications of what's out there in the game's world, or just from being really weird. So how about we take a look at some of those? The only rule I have being I'm going to try and avoid some of the more commonly known ones that kinda became memes, such as the chicken from Zero or the Yakuza family with an adult baby fetish from 2. With all of that out of the way, let's take a look at some of the strangest Yakuza sub-stories. Let's start things off by looking at an encounter with the mythological, with the sub-story Green Shadow from Yakuza 4, this one focusing on Saejima and only becomes available once you've reached the finale, with it also requiring it be nighttime. The story starts off simple enough. Apparently there's been a thief going around stealing food from the local homeless population. In addition, one of them reckons he saw some kind of green creature coming out of the sewer entrance by Children's Park, concluding it must have been a kappa, a creature from Japanese folklore with reptilian features that has an affinity for cucumbers. And depending on who's telling the story, either play mild pranks, or are murderous rapists that kidnap children and eat people. The tiger ends up finding that the thief has broken into his hideout, though he ends up running too fast to catch him, with one homeless guy being adamant it was the kappa he saw earlier. With no other leads, Saejima decides to lure the thief out of the sewer using some miso paste cucumber as bait, given its apparent love for cukes. Nearby, overhearing an assistant director complain about how they couldn't find a kappa for some kind of show, planning to instead make a show in the Amazon, the obvious next step after Japanese sewers. Surprisingly enough, the cucumbers actually work, though the thief once again is able to get away before Saejima can catch him. But after returning to the manhole with some kabamaki, which for anyone unfamiliar are basically sushi rolls with cucumber instead of fish, he's able to grab hold of this guy. After a short chase around town, the disguised man explains what happened. Apparently he's part of a TV show where he was supposed to hang around in the sewers to spread rumors about there being a kappa in Kamurocho, where he would then be captured by a famous explorer called Hiroshi-san. But after a month, the rumors didn't end up going anywhere, and the camera crew never showed up, with him eventually resorting to stealing food because of how hungry he was getting. He figures that since he's been captured, the show will have to schedule something else. But when Saejima asks if he broke into his hideout, the forgotten kappa ends up being confused as he's never been to the theater underground, only hanging around the underground mall and Children's Park. Saejima ultimately figures not to worry too much about not finding the other thief, since they didn't take anything from him. And then an actual kappa pops its head from the sewer. Hopefully it's the Animal Crossing type of kappa and not the rips your soul out from your anus type. Now, Yakuza is home to quite a few ghost sub-stories, which can range in tone from the more horror-centric Rising from the Shadows from Yakuza 2, to the slightly more comedic The Cursed Prince Circle from Yakuza 5. For this video, I decided to look at one of the lesser discussed ones with the Curse of Onomichi from Yakuza 6, which becomes available as early as Chapter 4, with the only other requirement being that it has to be nighttime. When these conditions are met, if Kiryu enters the cemetery at the northern end of Onomichi, he gets the strange feeling that someone is watching him, and whilst he tries to brush those fears away, he turns around to find himself face to face with some kind of apparition that then challenges Kiryu to a fight. Once he beats the Spectre, Kiryu then wakes up to find himself lying on the ground, with him soon after getting acquainted with the local gravekeeper, who informs him about how even the locals are usually too scared to come by due to the rumors of the place being haunted by the ghosts of pirates that raided the inland sea, joking that given their apparent love for fighting, Kiryu should stop by to see them again sometime. The rest of the sub-story is paced as such. Kiryu leaves the graveyard, returns sometime later, fights the ghost again with later encounters adding a second and eventual third member to the group. He wakes up on the ground and then chats with the gravekeeper. This cycle is repeated for 5 total fights, including the first one we just covered, so to avoid this getting too repetitive, I'll just cover Kiryu's conversations with the gravekeeper. After the second fight, he explains he can tell how the ghosts are feeling due to working on the site for so long, and that he reckons Kiryu might be the one that can finally put their souls to rest, given how much they seem to enjoy fighting him. After skipping out fight 3, he then returns following the aftermath of fight 4, where he thanks Kiryu helping the Spectres resolve their regrets, before revealing he's actually a 10th generation descendant of them, along with giving more details on their backstory. The group were a trio of mercenaries hired by some pirates during the 1500s in the hopes of tipping a war against other pirates in their favor. Unfortunately, despite how skilled the mercenaries were in combat, they were just not cut out for traveling on the seas, being rendered too sick to draw their weapons and eventually falling overboard and drowning, conveniently all at the same time. And with their prized mercenaries gone, the pirate crew was soon obliterated by one of their rivals, the ghosts being left with regret that they never got to fully hone their skills, hence why they've gotten so much joy fighting the Dragon of Dojima. The Gravekeeper then requests Kiryu to participate in one more fight with them so the group can finally move on, the man having waited a long time for someone to finally come to help put his ancestors to rest. Kiryu being Kiryu, along with also already being 4 fights in, agrees to do this, though before the last battle, he asks if they can do something about him waking up on the ground covered in dirt. Once the fight concludes, he finds himself waking up in his apartment, before figuring he should head to the grave to check if the ghosts have actually moved on. When he arrives, the Gravekeeper confirms that they indeed have, thanking him for being able to do what their, and by extension his descendants, couldn't. As thanks for his help, he gives Kiryu a talisman that wards off spirits, and when Kiryu looks up, the Gravekeeper is gone without a trace. If you somehow haven't caught on to what's going on, the Gravekeeper being a 10th generation descendant of people who were alive in the 1500s, with an average gap of 20 to 30 years, means he was likely born sometime in the 1700s. To be honest, I'm not really sure what's funnier, that it took Kiryu that long to pick up that something was off about him, or the fact he has more of a reaction to this than he did over fighting a trio of dead pirate mercenaries. But I guess to be fair, when you fistfight a pair of tigers as early as game 2, there's not really much left that can actually surprise you. Let's now move over to some of Yakuza's spin-offs just to add a little more variety. For anyone unfamiliar with them, Judgment and its sequel Lost Judgment are both games that take place in the same world as Yakuza, but focus on a new cast who have no real ties to the ones from the mainline games, the main protagonist being a Kamurocho-based lawyer-turned-detective called Takeyuki Yagami, with the games generally going for a more darker and serious tone compared to Yakuza. Specifically, we're going to be looking at Lost Judgment, which as part of the story has Yagami do some investigation work at Ijinsho's Seiryu High School, mostly hanging around after managing to become an outside counselor for the Mystery Research Club, or MRC for short. The side case we'll be looking at is the SRC's Hunt for the Truth, which becomes available as soon as you reach Chapter 3 and gain access to the Buzz Researcher, an app on Yagami's phone which allows him to see the source of social media posts after looking up a buzzword to limit the results, with it kicking off when he overhears some students at night and finds people on Chatter discussing recent sightings of UFOs in town, with there also being some mentions of an abduction that happened a few years back. He follows the traffic to the bar district, where he ends up seeing the supposed alien aircraft before soon being joined by Kyoko Amasawa, the MRC's president, alongside Akihiko Yabuki and Akari Tokioka, the president and vice president of the school's Supernatural Research Club, or the SRC. Amasawa and Yabuki having a fierce rivalry with each other over the validity of investigating supernatural phenomena, despite their shared insistence that they're not rivals. Yabuki and Tokioka soon run off to follow more UFO sightings, with Yagami eventually finding them near a parking lot by Hello Work, Yabuki being in the middle of attempting to call the aliens down using his sixth sense to feel their wavelengths, claiming he inherited the ability from his father. Yagami then brings up the abduction that happened a few years back, which causes Yabuki to go quiet, going on to confirm that there was apparently an alien abduction 2 years ago, before requesting if Yagami could use his detective skills to potentially find them, asking they speak with each other at a burger place called Wet Kitchen. Once there, Yabuki explains that the recent increase of UFO sightings in the area is similar to an increase that occurred 2 years back, which saw all kinds of reports about them being spotted from all kinds of sources, one of the most prominent being Yabuki's father, Eiichiro Yabuki, who was a UFO researcher that got interviewed on TV and published books on various supernatural phenomena. And the same night the giant spaceship was reportedly seen over Ijinsho, Eiichiro vanished without a trace. Yabuki is certain it was an abduction, as in addition to his old man having done research on them for years, he also apparently discovered radio signals that would allow him to communicate with the aliens, going as far to claim he had made first contact just hours before vanishing. Understandably, the police didn't really buy that story, but with the recent new wave of sightings, he feels like this could be his chance to prove UFOs exist, and in turn make the police and other governing bodies take the matter more seriously, requesting Yagami take a clear picture of the spacecraft when it next pops up. The detective not really buying into the story completely, though agrees to it if for no other reason than to potentially find leads on where his father went. Checking the Buzz researcher, he finds a UFO has been spotted at a park by the river, but after managing to take some pictures, he still gets the feeling it might be fake, at which point he's then approached by Tokioka, who provides some extra details on Eiichiro's disappearance. It turns out Tokioka's uncle is a detective that was hired by Yabuki's mother under suspicions that Eiichiro was having an affair, which turned out to be true, with her then having plans to divorce him, in turn taking a lot of the money he earned from his book sales and frequent TV appearances following the spike in UFO sightings, with him vanishing just before the proceedings were supposed to start, meaning it's a lot more likely that his story about making first contact was just a setup for an easy out when he eventually ran away with the person he was cheating with. She then explains that she's telling him all of this because she wants Yabuki to face reality and not turn into a full-on conspiracy nut, asking he not show the pictures in the event that it just reaffirms his beliefs. But Yagami decides he'll keep doing so, as he thinks that it will eventually lead him to discovering the truth and be able to debunk the UFOs as fake, adding that he already agreed to help him, the kid just not expecting how exactly he would be helped. Or in the event that they actually do turn out to be real, then inadvertently making the world as everyone knew it irreversibly change. He checks the researcher again, this time finding posts of people claiming they saw the ship fly out from underneath the school, and once he gets there he finds out a bunch of kids already gathered and are currently trying to find it, amongst them being Yabuki attempting to prove they do in fact exist to Amasawa. Up on the school's roof, the UFO is spotted once again, with it even flying in very close, with it also being kinda smaller than initially thought. After Yagami takes another picture and shows it to the kids, they see it fly off again, with Yabuki getting Yagami to chase after it to forcibly make first contact. The detective chasing it throughout the streets, all the civilians being too occupied with their discussions or phone calls to notice the grown man chasing a tiny spaceship. After managing to catch it, Yabuki and Amasawa soon catch up to him, with Yagami revealing the UFO is just a drone, finding propellers underneath and a made in China printing, confirming the whole thing and likely the similar sightings 2 years back were just hoaxes, along with making Yabuki accept his father really did run out on him and his mother, even admitting that he knew about how his mother hired a detective and that they were going to split. The recent incident and Yagami's words help him learn that whilst there's nothing wrong with believing in the supernatural in principle, you shouldn't use that to deny the reality around you. After chatting with Amasawa about the importance of having the courage to face the truth, they then find that Tokioka has been watching them, and quickly figure out she was the one piloting the drone they caught, confessing she worked to help break Yabuki's fixation on UFOs, as if he's always looking at the stars, he'll never be looking at her. With the satisfaction of solving the supernatural mystery, along with discovering the romantic one right under their noses, Yagami and Amasawa then head home for the night. And then an actual UFO flies by. Whilst we still don't have confirmation on if Ichiro actually was abducted by aliens, given what we know about him and his potential plans to ditch his family after cheating on his wife, gonna be real, the fucker deserves it. To end things off, let's shift away from the supernatural stuff to the more grounded setting of a zombie apocalypse. For anyone unfamiliar, Yakuza Dead Souls is a non-canonical spin-off game where 1 year after the events of Yakuza 4, a zombie outbreak occurs in Kamurocho, with it being up to 4 heroes to fight back against the horde, help civilians trapped in the quarantine zone, and discover what happened to cause the dead to start rising. For this case, we'll be looking at one of Majima's sub-stories called The Sixth Chairman's Woe, which takes place inside the recently opened Kamurocho Hills that's housing various survivors, including the Tojo clan's current chairman, Daigo Dojima. Whilst inside the place, Daigo ends up revealing to Majima that 3 zombies have managed to break their way in, but his men haven't been able to find them, so he makes a request of the Mad Dog to find a way to lure them out, offering to help in any way he can in the hopes of preventing any more casualties. Using the logic of horror movies, Majima figures the most effective way to do that is to use a lovey-dovey couple. But unfortunately, none of the couples in the mall seem to be up for the idea of being zombie bait. Backed into a corner, Majima then eyes up his boss, commenting that his hair has been growing long. Daigo immediately refuses to play into things, but when the Mad Dog brings up his promise, he's effectively forced into playing the role of a woman for Majima's plan. The rest of the sub-story then follows Majima goading Daigo into being flirtatious with him to lure out the zombies, first by trying to get him to latch onto his arm and press his chest against it, then getting him to talk more like a woman that's trying to grab hold of him out of fear, and then ending off by trying to coerce a kiss out of him, with Daigo hating every minute of it. Meanwhile, Majima seems to be taking a weird amount of pleasure from this scenario. After the zombies are taken care of, Daigo gives Majima a form of payment to make him promise that he will never speak of what happened, the Mad Dog appreciating the kid's growth as chairman to do whatever it takes to protect the people around him, whether they be Tojo or civilians. Now, why exactly did I choose to cover this sub-story exactly? To be honest, it's mostly just because this is probably the most unrepentantly horny I've ever seen Majima be for someone outside of Kiryu in Kiwami 1. Especially when you consider that we don't actually get to see him interact with Daigo much, despite the fact he literally rejoined the Tojo to serve as a guiding hand and protector for him as part of a promise to Kiryu in Yakuza 3. So this being one of the few times these two actually get to hang around each other is certainly a choice. I think we'll end things here for now, but if there's any interest to cover this topic further, I'll gladly jump at the first opportunity to yap about this series again. Until then though, please either check out the games if you haven't already, or maybe even consider watching my series where I explain the plots to 2 of my friends who prior had never played a Yakuza game before. We've done the first 4 games and I've just started work on the editing for 5. But until the next video, thanks for watching.